Hello and welcome to Maiden, Matriarch with me, Louise Perry. My guest today is Katharine Birbalsingh, the so-called strictest headmistress in Britain, headmistress of the Michaela School in London, recently at the centre of a legal battle and a lot of media furore around the Michaela's strict regime and efforts to diffuse tensions between students of different faiths and ethnicities, because this is in a hyper-diverse area of London. We spoke about the issues that Michaela has faced over its 14-year history, the various kinds of opposition that Katharine has faced in her work, the details of this legal case, how it came about, how the questions of religion play out in Michaela in a disciplinary sense. And then in the extended part of the episode, we spoke about some of the broader conclusions that we can reach from this, what the struggles that the Michaela School has encountered tell us about the struggles that are encountered more broadly in Britain in managing ethnic and religious tensions. That extended version of the episode is available at louiseperry.substack.com, where, as always, you can also find the bonus episodes I do with my husband, the extended episodes, the whole back catalogue of extended episodes, and also the MMM chat community. Enjoy. Many of you will know that Christianity is a subject of fascination for me, and the role of Christianity in shaping the modern world is a theme I return to again and again on the podcast. My view is that we can't really understand ourselves or understand the world around us without getting to grips with it, which is why I'm very glad to put you towards a new online course called 321. It's an introduction to Christianity that's imaginative, thoughtful, engaging. It assumes absolutely no prior knowledge. It's presented by the wonderful Glenn Scrivener, who has been a guest on the MMM podcast previously, and I've also been a guest on his show. Glenn presents 8 video-led sessions, which are based around some beautiful animated stories that illustrate the Christian message. You can check it out for free at 321course.com/MMM. Just enter your email, choose a password, and you're in. There's no spam, there's no fees. Just visit 321course.com/MMM. Should we start just by talking about Michaela and the background to the school? For anyone who is not aware, quite a lot of listeners are in America and other places, so they might not be familiar with Michaela, even though I think most Brits will be.
Right. Okay. Yes. Well, we opened Michaela in 2014. It's a free school, which is essentially a copy of the charter schools in America. And a bunch of us decided to do something different in the inner city. I've always worked in the inner city all my life. But I thought things could be done differently and better, to give children great behavior, great teaching, great values. And we opened with 120 kids in 2014. We now have over 700. We're a full school. And we do really well with the grades and yes, we send a few children off to Oxford and Cambridge, but most importantly, all of our children, whether they're in the bottom set or the top set, make massive progress at the school. And in fact, the last 2 years running, we've had the top progress in the country out of all of the secondary schools. So that's really nice. And also we get about 800 visitors every year to the school, mainly teachers from across the world, actually, who come to see what we do because they've just heard through word of mouth, often on social media, about how different the school is. So they walk around. I was just speaking to another head teacher who came to visit today. This is his 7th visit today. And he said he just comes to soak it up, and it makes him so happy to see what's possible.
Talk about the area a bit. So you're in Wembley, right, northwest London, which is a very diverse area. As a high proportion of your kids are from Muslim families, is that right?
Yeah, about half of them, but all of them are ethnic minority. So it's very typical, frankly, of the inner city in London. You've got a whole variety of different ethnic minorities. And then of that, you also have kind of white Polish or white Lithuanians and so on. And it's just a real melting pot of all different types of kids, really.
So are there no white British kids in the school? It's not even like a minority. Are there just...
If there are, there'll be 1 or 2. There aren't very many. The white kids, the white kids are from Eastern Europe mainly. And I say from, I mean, they will have been born here,
Yeah.
but parents maybe from somewhere else, or grandparents are from somewhere else, depending.
Yes. Yeah, got you. And you're really oversubscribed, right? Having grown so quickly, and that there's clearly enormous demand from local families.
Yeah, although, it should be said that the way the admission system works in Britain means that you don't necessarily get to go to the school that you'd like to go to. And the system is such that you have to choose 6 schools. So obviously, if you choose a school 4th, 5th, or 6th, you don't necessarily want to be there. And then people are sort of distributed according to the systems, which I don't really understand. So there's a whole bunch of people who would love to get into our school who don't get in. And then there are some people who end up coming here who don't necessarily want to come here, but that's the way the system goes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. The wisdom of these kind of allocation systems.
Yeah.
And so you are famously Britain's strictest headmistress, right?
Yes.
Talk about how you achieved that title. What is it about Michaela which is distinctive in this respect?
Yeah, so I think people think that I march up and down the corridors with whips and chains, but that's ridiculous. But I believe very much in consistency, and I am sort of old-fashioned and traditional. That I believe that children should be obedient. Like that word, for instance, has gone out of fashion completely. I always say, in the day, throughout my teaching career, and I've been doing this for over 25 years, it used to be the case that we talk about praise and punishment, but then that changed. I said, oh, no, you can't talk about punishment. That's too harsh on them. Let's make it sanctions. So then we talked about sanctions. And then they said, oh, no, sanctions, it's too difficult for them to hear that word. Let's talk instead about corrections. So then we all talked about corrections. This is over years. Then eventually they said, oh, no, that doesn't work. Let's now talk about consequences. Eventually you get to the point now, I'd say, where there are some people who don't believe there should be consequences at all for poor behavior. And that somehow you hate children if you do want to give them a consequence. So I don't just believe in consequences. I believe in praise and punishment. And I believe that children need both in order to thrive. I think it's a silly idea that children are sort of mature enough to have a deep philosophical conversation around why you might do X, Y, and Z. I mean, you can explain these things to them, of course you can, but to expect them to understand this on a deep level and therefore change their behavior without a praise and punishment system is just silly. So, and what does that mean? You get detentions. Whoop-de-doo. I mean, so what? You do a 30-minute detention, you go home at the end. So we are very consistent on that. All of the teachers follow the rules here. All of us love the kids. That's the other thing is they think, well, there is punishment, but there's also praise. And as long as you punish kids in an atmosphere of love where they know that you're on their side and they know why you are punishing them, they will accept it. And not only will they accept it, they'll actually thank you for it. But that is very much because of our values that we pump with the kids. We very much believe in a set of values like taking personal responsibility, having a duty towards others, self-sacrifice for the sake of the whole, being, that's to do with the personal responsibility, but being responsible, turning up on time, being kind to others, working hard, being grateful. These are all values that we teach actively in the school constantly. And again, people will object to this. I mean, I don't really understand why anybody would object to it. If you come and visit our school, and you're very welcome, and all your listeners are welcome, you just go on the website, you sign up, you can come and have a tour with the kids, you can have lunch with the kids, and you'll just see a bunch of really happy kids. And you'll see what's possible. That's what I always say is when you come here, you think, wow, you mean every school could be like this? Yeah, every school could be like this if everyone were to just understand what children need. And I don't think they do.
So some of the things you do, this is what I've not had the pleasure of visiting yet, right? I would like to. What I've read about and heard about is some of the things you do are quite sort of classic old-fashioned school rules. So things like no talking in the corridors. So kids have to walk between classes in silence. Standing up when teachers come in the room. Am I right about that? Things like that. I did that at
Well,
school. That's not too... That's not too
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, actually, they only stand for me at assembly. So
Okay.
when we first opened, we had conversations around, well, would this work? Would that work? What is it like practically? And we thought about them standing up when teachers come into the rooms, but because we're so good at sharing good practice, I have teachers coming in and out of classrooms all the time, sitting at the back, taking notes, saying, oh, I'm going to take that idea, I'm going to do this, that's really good. And they're learning from each other. So if the children stood up every time a teacher came into the room, they would be standing up all the time. And I didn't want that. So we didn't do that. But at assembly, which they have with me once a week, they stand at that moment. The head of year says, stand for the headmistress, and then I walk in. These are rituals, and rituals are so important, not just for children, but for adults. The ritual of sitting down and having dinner with your family every night, the ritual of taking a bath every evening and brushing your teeth, the ritual of sitting down at your desk in the same place to do your homework, the ritual of walking that same walk to school every day. So standing for your headmistress, sitting down at the lunch dining hall in the same way. Ritual is what gives us a kind of structure. Now, what the critics will say is they'll say, oh, but the problem is we want children to be creative. We want them to think for themselves. And in such a structured, old-fashioned environment, people are not able to be creative. I always think it's quite funny when they say that, when I think of, all the great philosophers and historians and scientists and mathematicians that have existed for hundreds of years. They were very creative and they all thought for themselves. They came out of a very traditional education. And so it is the modern education system that does not allow people to be creative and think for themselves. The irony is, and I can see why we think that this is wrong, because it doesn't seem intuitive, but the fact is the structure and the order is what allows children to feel safe enough to push the boat out. So they don't put their hands up thinking, oh gosh, the bullies in the class are going to laugh at me. Oh gosh, I'm going to seem like teacher's pet. If it's the case that the culture is one of love, where people will get punished because it's consistently done in every lesson, then that means that the teacher is in charge, and that comes, and not the bullies, right? So it's not the child in the class does not think I'm worried about the bullies, because the child is being led by the teacher who is in a position of authority. And that's another value of ours, which I think has been lost nowadays, this idea of authority, that we adults should be in charge and that the children should be told to do what we want them to do. Now, that doesn't mean within that, you don't allow them some space to be able to express themselves or to be able to create their own piece of homework or whatever it is. That's fine. But we do very much need to be in a position of authority leading the way. And nowadays, parents want to be friends with their children. Teachers want to be friends. It's very much we're on a par. And I think that thinking comes from the talk around equality and fairness, which often comes, it has to be said, from the left, and that those are the lenses through which they see. Jonathan Haidt is very good on this in his book Righteous Mind, where he says those are the two big things for the left: fairness and equality. And for those who lean more to the right, there are things like the idea of what is sacred, and that, the old-fashioned things, because I do think that there are some sacred cows on the left as well, but the more conservative-minded person feels that children being children, adults being in a position of authority, that is very sacred to a small c conservative. And so the way in which they will speak to children, their expectations of children are very different. And so when people come here and they say, oh gosh, how do you do it? I do have to point to our small c conservative values, which I'm afraid a lot of people just want to reject because they are small c conservative and they're old and fuddy-duddy and so on. But I do think they work, and they have worked for hundreds of years.
Yes, I often think I tend to think that the key point of disagreement between the right and the left at a really fundamental level is this question about hierarchies and whether or not hierarchies are ever justified. And the radical left-wing position would say no, even when it's a hierarchy as fundamental as that between, say, parents and children. And so you'll see this in, say, gentle parenting as a fashion, which I think is very sort of left-wing coded. I'm sure that you have no patience with gentle parenting,
No.
Katharine. Yeah, yes, not very Michaela-esque. And yeah, and I also think that I mean the impression that I get from looking at gentle parenting sort of being attempted in my peer group, and I've heard this from nannies and childminders and so on who also see it from a professional perspective, is that parents will tend to, normally mums who are pursuing this, will try really, really hard to do all the gentle parenting stuff. So never, ever say no, never raise their voices, never impose punishments of any kind, whatever. And they'll do a great job, within the confines of the philosophy, until they completely lose their patience and they snap and they scream at their kids.
Exactly.
And they lose it, and then they feel so
right.
guilty, and then they end up with this horrible cycle of kind of binge and purge in relation to their own inability to just behave normally, because gentle parenting is not instinctive.
Well, and they're letting their children down. Children need boundaries, and they need to be clear. You will never hear our children say that's unfair. In 10 years, I've never heard a child say it. And that's because they know that there is a fair system and everybody is treated in the same way. And it doesn't, if a deputy head is dealing with you because you were naughty over here, if you get, this deputy head, he's not going to say, it's all right, you're with me, mate, I'm going to sort you out. Whereas that other deputy head, we know he's super strict, so we're not going to get away with it with him. That doesn't happen here. Everybody's exactly the same. And so I believe, this is my own, idea, but I believe that one of the big reasons why children from families that are split tend to do far worse in life and so on, not just academically, but just life-wise, is because of the inconsistency between the parents. Now, of course, you would prefer both parents to be in the same house with the child because they get to see both parents. And obviously, both parents bring different things to the raising of their child. And frankly, also just from a practical point of view, one of them's cooking the dinner while one of them's helping with the homework. It makes life much easier. But if you are split, if you are split, the best thing you can do, if you can, be on the same page. Because if you approach the child in a consistent manner, your child is more likely to succeed despite being from a split household. If, on the other hand, dad allows him on the iPad all the time, but mum says not, dad says, don't worry about the bath, but mum says, you got to get into the bath, if it's when you start, and then of course you have new partners who come in, who then are also involved, and there are more and more people with their different ideas, and the child is then confused. What I find, our children are so happy, and it's one of the things guests say, how come they're so happy? Because they know where they stand. Because all of their teachers, the 70 odd, 80 odd staff that we have here, whether it's teachers, it could be the kitchen staff, it could be the office staff, we all sing from the same hymn sheet. And that makes us strong. If you think about the football team, England, they go out to play. When are they their strongest? When they're a team, right? And what is their, Gareth Southgate, he says, he's got them together and he's saying, come on, we can do it. There's a leader. There's very much a hierarchy. If he's saying, I'm just one with you, well, then they're like, well, who do we listen to, right? Like, hierarchy works, and not just with children, but also with us teachers at school. I'm obviously the headmistress, but then there's my senior team, then there are my middle leaders, and then there are my ordinary teachers. And the children understand that. And they understand that ritual around me. So I always say that I'm a bit like the Wizard of Oz. And they don't really know what goes on in my office. And they don't know what, and then I come out at assembly and I'll stand for the headmistress. And look, we don't have the kind of history of some of the older private schools, We don't have that mystery that exists in schools that are old. We're in a modern 1960s office block right next to the train tracks with rats running into our yard all the time and us putting out rat traps. Like, that's where we're at. We're in the inner city. So we have to create this atmosphere of stand for the headmistress. And when a head of year brings me a child, well, miss, I wanted to bring you this child because he's done this amazing thing. And I hold out my hand and I shake his hand. There's a real sense of, Miss Birbalsingh shook my hand. Or the other way. What do you think Miss Birbalsingh would think of this? This is shocking behavior, So you play with that because that's where children will excel and they thrive in that kind of environment. But if you don't have the hierarchy, then I'm not super important anymore. um, so it's so important for children to do well, I'd say.
So some of what you do, some of what's distinctively Michaela, right, is quite old fashioned. That there's kind of drawing on the traditions of British public schooling almost, a lot of this. I presume, for instance, you must have prefects and things like that, right? So you're also imposing some hierarchy within the student body. Yes, these are tried and tested methods of controlling children, right?
Yes, yes.
But then some of the other stuff, and this brings us on to the recent case, is different in the sense that you have imposed very I don't want to say rigid. You've imposed somewhat novel rules in order to deal with the fact that the student body is very diverse and you have different religions in the mix and you have different cultural expectations in the mix. And you have zero acceptance of any sort of racialized bullying in the school. Talk to me about some of the rules that you have introduced to try and soothe any possible cultural differences between students.
Yeah, so I think sadly, generally speaking, when it comes to the multiculturalism debate, you've got people on the left who say multiculturalism is wonderful, isn't it great? Da, da, da. And then you see all kinds of problems with multiculturalism, but they refuse to recognize that there are any issues. And then you've got people on the right who say it's terrible, complain, complain, complain. Their solution seems to be, I don't know, move all brown and black people out of Britain, I think. I mean, I'm not quite sure. They just complain about it. And I'm saying here's my solution, right? Which is if schools were like ours. Now, look, I mean, every head teacher needs to run his school as he feels fit. And also, obviously, it depends on your intake, right? We have a very multicultural intake. And so our systems are very much that I said to you about our values before. I said, personal responsibility, a duty towards others before yourself, the idea of self-sacrifice for the betterment of the whole. So we, for instance, sing God Save the King, we sing Jerusalem, we sing I Vow to Thee My Country. These are songs, national songs that we sing together to bring us together under the umbrella of Britishness. I feel too often brown and black people in this country are denied their Britishness. People say to them, no, you're actually from Nigeria, you're actually from Jamaica, etc. And of course, their parents may be, or their grandparents may be, but they themselves are British. And I don't want to deny their heritage. I wouldn't want to deny my own heritage, but my parents from the Caribbean, but I am very much British. And I have an affinity. So, on Jamaica Day, every year I'll say, oh, it's Jamaica Day, but, it's not my beating heart, right? And that's because I'm here in Britain. I'm British in the way that I behave, and this is my home. So that's very much how we speak with the children. And then within this multicultural space, and people then take issue actually sometimes with me saying it's multicultural because they say, oh, no, it's just multi-faith then. Because if you have everyone buying into a certain set of overarching values, that means there aren't different cultures. But there are different cultures. There are different cultures because, I don't know, some of the kids go home and eat pork. Some of the kids go home and eat beef. Some of the kids go home and eat vegetarian, like they have different cultures. But they have those cultures, but they buy into the overarching values of the school. And the big one there for multiculturalism is I'm willing to sacrifice stuff that's really important for me so that we can all get on together in the school. So that we're not going to promote one religion over another. So I know recently, right now, today in the news, they were talking about the Christian assemblies that all schools are meant to have. Now, people don't realize this, but legally, schools are meant to do Christian assemblies and have an act of daily worship every day, and nobody tends to do this sort of thing. Now, we don't do it. We actively don't do it. I think in other schools, often they don't do it because, well, they haven't really thought about it. We don't do it because we do not want to promote one religion over another. And we are a secular school. Now, obviously, if I was running a Muslim school, if I was running a Christian school, a Hindu school, different kettle of fish. But this is a secular school, and our secularism allows us to treat all of the religions equally. Now, I've seen people write things about us and say, or about me, and they say, oh, well, the thing is, she says, keep religion outside of the school. I haven't said that. I've never said keep religion outside of the school. Religion is allowed inside of the school as long as it doesn't upset the whole. So we allow children to wear hijabs, Rastafarian haircuts, Sikh bangles. We allow the Muslim children to fast during Ramadan. So it is not the case that we say no to all religion aspects. So the prayer issue that was in the news recently, because we do not allow prayer rituals on site, and the reason for that is, look, our building is such that in order to make the school work as the strictest school in Britain, where the children walk in silence in the corridors, where the children have a particular type of family lunch where they serve food to each other and clean up after each other, in order for us to leave the bags in the classrooms with their coats and so on, in order for the school to function as it currently is, we would not be able to have prayer rituals. Now, if it were possible, and it wouldn't upset the whole of the way we run the school and our values, then we would do it. For instance, on residential trips, we allow prayer because it's not me saying no to all religious issues. It's me saying only if it upsets the balance of the whole. On a residential trip, it doesn't upset the balance of the whole because we don't have the issues of our building. We don't have where do we put the bags? How do we move in silence in the corridors? It's a different thing on a residential trip. So it really is more of a practical thing. Notice how when you said to me about standing up for the teachers, and I said, well, actually, they just stand for me. Why? I then said, practically, it doesn't work for us. So we have a vision of what we want our school to be and how we want the children to behave and how we want the children to achieve, and then anything that stops us from achieving that goal, we'll say no to. People often say to me, oh, but you just have Michaela, but add prayer. And I would say, no, that's not an option. But we could be more of a normal school and have prayer, but then we wouldn't get our GCSE results. We wouldn't have the silent corridors. We wouldn't have family lunch. Now that's an option, but it's not a school that I'm going to run, right? I mean, I'm running Michaela because I believe in what we are offering these children, which, by the way, in terms of the Muslim intake here, huge numbers going off to Russell Group universities, huge success. And our Muslim families, of course, are very keen for it to remain that way. So it's not the case that our Muslim families are saying, we need prayer, we need prayer. Very small minority of fewer than 5 families who are saying this is an issue. The vast majority, the hundreds of families. I even have one man who wrote in saying, I'm going to come in, I'm going to give the children assemblies, I'm going to explain to them that Islam is a religion of tolerance. It is a religion where we can, of course, get on with other religions. And that is, the people who say, no, it's not. Islam is intolerant. Islam will not will not bend in any way in order to get on with other religions and other people of different races and so on. Well, I just think they're wrong, and I think they're wrong because I know our Muslim families and I know their stance on it, which is of course we can all get on with each other, and of course we're not. It shouldn't be the case that one religion trumps another religion. So that is why that's why we do what we do. It means for a very happy environment where the children get on with each other. I mean, one of the things that's striking about our school, children are friends across racial and religious divides all the time. They don't ever think, oh, you're a Muslim, can't be friends with you. You're a Hindu, can't be friends with you. That doesn't happen here. You will see, if you look around the streets in London, look at the groups of kids. They are often according to race and religion. And we, for instance, when we first opened, we were meat eating. And within a few days, we placed people out, kids out, and we saw, well, those ones are eating meat but no pork. These ones are eating meat but no beef because they only eat one dish. There's no choice because it's a family lunch, like a family dinner. You eat from one pot of food. And then we realized, oh my goodness, we're dividing the children according to race and religion. So the only way that meat could work in our canteen, the only way it would work for us to do prayer rituals is if we divide the children according to race and religion, or we just become a normal school and we don't have family lunch and we don't have silent corridors, we don't have bags in the rooms and all the rest of it, all those logistical issues. Now, obviously I'm not going to divide children according to race and religion. I mean, it's never going to happen under my watch. So, I mean, had we lost the court case, I would have resigned. There is no way that I would have stayed in my position here, because I'm not willing to run a normal school. We have an extraordinary school here that has taken me 14 years to build. I'm not spending 14 years of my life to build something for them to then pull it down.
Yeah. So we spoke briefly earlier about this, the way that local schools are allocated, because these are all, I mean, just to be clear, I'm sure this is, most people would have assumed this, but Michaela is state funded, so there's no, the parents don't pay any fees to go, right? So there is a system of sort of local allocation. To parents who want to send their kids to a non-secular school, I mean, and your secular style sounds very much like the French style of laïcité, right? Like determinedly secular school. Do they have the option of going to a Muslim school, for instance, locally?
Yes, but it's not just Muslim schools. It's literally any other secondary school in the borough. Like, they all have prayer rooms, right? So they are all normal schools. We are not normal. If you want a school, there are 16 other schools that have prayer rooms, and there are also Muslim schools in the area that they can choose. So you have your choice. And the thing is, if you make us have a prayer room, we become a normal school like all of those other schools. There is no option of Michaela with prayer, right? There is a different version of Michaela, which is more of a normal school, which you've got 16 of them all around us. Like, so that option already exists. But the option of Michaela only exists in one school, which is here, which requires us to not have prayer rituals. It requires us to have silent corridors. It requires a family lunch. It requires children standing for the headmistress, but not standing for the teachers. There are a whole bunch of things that make Michaela Michaela. And if you take them away, then we're no longer the school that we are.
And families have opted into this, right? If you're sending your child to Michaela, it is with the expectation that you're signing up for all of this. And also the great benefit and the reason why it's attractive to families is that you have these marvelous exam results and you're really boosting children's educational attainment. So that's the deal that families are presented with.
Yeah. So that's it. So we have 2 welcome events before we open, because as I've said, there are children who are then placed in the school who haven't necessarily chosen the school first because of the admission system. So all the families come to those welcome events, and we insist on it. There are 2 of them where I repeat at both of them I go through the rules that I know that parents might not like. And it's not just the religious issues. It's also, there are silent corridors. Your child will easily get a detention. If he turns around in a lesson, he'll get a detention. If he looks out the window for too long, he'll get a detention. Like I go on about the different things that I know families may not like. And I say, it's a free country. You don't have to choose us now. The Brent Council have suggested that you have a place here, but you can reject that place if you don't want to come here. And that I'm very clear about. And some families do reject the place because they listen to me and they say, you know what? I don't like the fact that they're right next to the trains and that the sport is actually relatively reduced because they don't have a sports hall. Sadly, I wish we did. But I explain all of these things to them. I say, look, if you're really into sport, we're not going to be able to offer it because we don't have our building is very restrictive. Just like I say, if you're really into prayer, our building is very restrictive. We can't allow it. So it's up to you. And ultimately, I do think we need to respect that because otherwise, our school wouldn't be able to exist. We've got the top progress in the country, right? That progress would disappear. Not only that, but, it's really interesting when you look at the top 20 Progress 8 schools in the country, the vast majority of them, if not all of them, are faith schools. They all have a particular faith that they believe in, right? Now, we have a particular way of doing things. We have a certain set of values. What I don't like is the idea that they're saying, yeah, but because yours isn't a religion, we don't respect that. Because yours isn't a religion, we're going to force you to do whatever we want. But if it's a religion, if it ticks the religion box, well, then that's sacrosanct. That is sacred, coming back to that word that Haidt uses. But my school is not sacred. Your values are not sacred. We're just going to run roughshod over them and force you to give up something that you spent 14 years working for and fighting. I've fought everybody. We used to have people protesting outside the school trying to close us down. Before we ever opened, we had people turning up at our parent evening sporting events, shouting at me, trying to drown me out so that I wouldn't be able to tell the parents what was on offer so that they could choose our school. We had to move 3 different boroughs to find eventually this building because every council stopped us from having the building that we wanted to. People would lie to us and tell us that this building was available, and then they would sell it out from under us to a private company to set up private flats, and then we'd have to go somewhere else. 3.5 years it took us to eventually set up, and we eventually got this school, this building that nobody wanted, and nobody wanted it because of the rats, because of the trains, because it's an old office block. We have made it into our home, and we have had to fight for 14 years for this to be our home. And then somebody's going to come along and say to me, oh, sorry, your values don't mean enough. I'm sorry, but your values don't tick the religion box. So we're not going to have enough respect for you to actually allow you to run the school as you see fit, despite the fact that you get the highest progress in the country, right? Like, I mean, it's crazy. It's just crazy that anyone would suggest that. But unfortunately, there are those who do.
Why was there so much early resistance to Michaela, all these protests and so forth?
Well, in 2010, the Conservative Party came into power and brought with it free schools, which, charter schools have been in America for the last 30 years. They've only just started us under the name of free schools in 2010. So the first few schools that tried to set up had a lot of negativity, and a lot of people fought them on it. We were one of those first schools. But also it was the case that I'd given a speech at the Conservative Party conference. Now, I am not a big C conservative. I'm a small C conservative, which I think in many ways perhaps maybe even prevents me from being a big C conservative, because so many of them are not small C conservatives. But I went because I was invited by Michael Gove, who was the education secretary at the time, and I went along and gave a speech. I was a bit naive. I didn't really think about it. Anyway, I went along. And in fact, so many people liked my speech. They gave me a standing ovation. And that year online, more people watched my speech than did the then Prime Minister David Cameron's speech. So it caused a bit of a stir. I then had to step down from my job. This is before cancel culture was a thing, but essentially I was cancelled, and I was told that I would never work in the state sector again. So the only way in which I could get back to working with disadvantaged children in the inner city, which is what I've always done, was to set up my own school. So I went to it. It never occurred to me that it would take 3.5 years and that I would have the vitriol that was sent my way. Horrible, nasty, racist emails, horrible protests, really awful stuff. Now, you'd say, why? Why do they hate me in particular? My opinion of that is that being the ethnicity that I am, we are not allowed to betray the left. In fact, one woman who came to disrupt one of our meetings, she actually stood up shouting at me. I mean, she was so angry, white woman, saying, you betrayed us when you went to speak at the Tory party conference. And I was thinking, betrayed who? Who are you? I don't know anything about you. How could I betray you? But I feel too often the left feel they own brown and black people, and they own our vote. They own the way we think. And as long as I say the things that they agree with, so as long as I push out critical race theory, as long as I say, they're, talk incessantly about institutionalized racism, not that I necessarily say, I have complex views on racism and what constitutes racism and what doesn't. But the fact is, if I don't say what the left want me to say, they're going to attack me. And that is... it's very annoying, because I would say some of my views are left-wing, although I am a small C conservative. My father, for instance, is very much a small C conservative, has been all his life, but he will never vote on the right. He's very much a man of the left. And it used to be the case that old school lefties, like my father, were small C conservatives. It's just that the new modern left has moved away from that small C conservatism and has taken on a different role, I'd say, in society.
Yeah. So this is the all essential context for understanding why this recent case has attracted so much media attention, and I think also why it happened in the first place. Because, well, you should explain what exactly was the source of dispute in relation to Muslim prayer in school.
Yeah, well, there was a girl who her and her mum took us to court. And the idea was that she wanted a prayer room. And the point is, we can't just have one prayer room, not when you have hundreds of Muslim children. You'd have to have several prayer rooms. That's when I say about the bags. Our rooms at the moment are open with the bags and the coats in them. We'd have to move all the bags and coats out. We have nowhere to put them. There are a whole variety of reasons why what she was asking for is just not possible. And so that's why we went to court. My position is always very much that we head teachers need to hold the line. I think, and I'd say the same thing for parents listening, hold the line with your children. The fact is that demands will be made of you all of the time, insisting that, you know, we shouldn't have a phone policy. It's wrong to confiscate children's phones. There are all sorts of families who have got angry about that, and they say, give us back our phone. And I say, no. These are the rules. This is what you signed up for. This is what I explained to you at the welcome event. And you said, okay. You can't then come back to me 3 years later. Because remember, she'd been here as well for years, was fine with no praying. And then suddenly went, you know what? I'm not happy with this. I've changed my mind. So I say no to the things that are going to change the rules of the school, change the ethos or the values of the school, because I've had to fight very hard to keep those rules and ethos. And normally, frankly, I have to say I am fighting the soft liberal left who don't recognize that what they are arguing for hurts children in the inner city. That's what they don't get. You know, they think that they're being compassionate. You know, I'm the one that's been working in the inner city for the last 25 years. I'd like to know what they do. You know, the fact is, I don't come into school at 6:45 every morning because I hate children. It's because I love them. And I know that what we do works with them. But anybody who is going to threaten what we do here, well, if we end up in court, we end up in court. And if I have to resign, then I'll resign. Because I'm doing this not because, I mean, I could do anything. You know, like people know who I am, right? I could do any number of different things. I don't have to be at Michaela. I mean, in fact, I'm a head teacher. Most people, free school heads, they stick around 4 or 5 years and then they become an executive head. I could be earning so much more money than what I currently earn. I could be an executive head, CEO of an academy chain. I could move countries. And right now, there's a job offer. Right now, I could take up in New York to set up a set of charter schools. But I'm not doing it. And I'm not doing it because I believe in what we do here at Michaela. I also believe in the small revolution that's been taking place in education in this country that started under Michael Gove, where traditionalists have come forward and said, you know what? The stuff that we've been doing in terms of the classroom practice and our understanding of behavior and what children are capable of, we reject that, and we realize that the stuff that from yesteryear that works, we're gonna push that instead. And we here at Michaela have been part of that revolution. And I see us very much as a show pony. People come from all over the world. We've had since opening over 7,000 visitors who have come and look around and say, my goodness, I can't believe what I'm seeing. And that's lovely because I show what inner city children who come from disadvantaged families are able to achieve. And our families know this and are very grateful for it. So when people say, well, they're obviously not, what about this one girl? She's one girl. You know, the vast majority of families love it here. And the fact is, she's still here, the girl. She hasn't gone anywhere. Like, she knows there's no prayer, but she's still here. It is possible for people to make a sacrifice over what they want and to put the whole of the community ahead of their own desires. And she actually, you know, unwittingly has demonstrated that. She has demonstrated that it is possible to do that. And that's very much what I want all of our children to learn. You know, we all as adults and our children need to learn how to get on with each other. And we don't do that at the moment. You know, one of my worries in looking at the country is I say, my goodness, what's going to happen in 10, 15 years' time? Because things seem to be exploding because people are unable to talk to each other and support each other and sacrifice for each other. And that is very much what we do here at Michaela.
I've read that the build up to this girl making a legal claim was that there was a sort of a sort of mimetic effect among some of the Muslim students, where there are no prayer rooms, as we've said, but they were sort of insisting on praying.
Yes, I'll explain that. So the reason is because we used to say prayer was allowed in the yard. So we allowed prayer in the yard, but we couldn't have prayer rooms for all the logistical reasons that I've just said, but prayer could happen in the yard. It's just that for 9 years, nobody ever prayed. And nobody prayed. They could have. They chose not to, which shows that it is possible for Muslim children to go to school and choose not to pray. It also shows that we clearly don't have anything against prayer. Otherwise, we wouldn't have allowed it. So neither would we allow it on our residential trips. Right now, we allow it on our residential trips. So we don't have anything against prayer. We said, fine, they can do it in the yard. Some children did it in the yard, did pray in the yard that year. This is last year. And then what happened was it was amazing how it changed the whole atmosphere of the yard and of the school. So while I say to you, you come and visit now, if you came and visit before then, it's a lovely, happy school. But what happened in this moment was over a week, it wasn't even very long, over the space of a week, children who were praying became emboldened to then, so this is during Ramadan, so some of the children are fasting, some of the Muslim children are fasting, some of them are not. It's up to them, right? They don't have to fast. And the ones who were not fasting were then intimidated by the ones who were praying and who were fasting into fasting. So they would stand by the break hall table, and when the children would come to take their break food, they would be stopped from taking it because the Muslim children who were more pious, as it were, would say, "No, you're a Muslim. You're not allowed to take the food." One girl started suddenly wearing a hijab. That had never happened before. One girl dropped out of the choir because music is haram. The Muslim children who were wanting a bit more freedom in terms of what they might want to do were being intimidated into not doing those things. And that whole atmosphere changed. Not only that, but people from the outside of the school saw the children praying in the yard and got very angry about it and said, no, 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 no. The children need to have a prayer room inside. And they started up a petition against us. This then resulted in horrible threats that came towards me, towards one of my black teachers, calling us the most horrible N-word, monkey, coon. I don't know. I can't tell you the number of horrible racist words that we were called. And these messages were sent directly to the school. They were put on social media. We were genuinely in fear of our lives. I mean, it was absolutely hideous. And the governors then took the right decision, I believe, in banning prayer across the school. Because before we had said yes to prayer in the yard, and then we banned it altogether.
The kids are still allowed to fast. I guess that means that the family lunches, the children will just sit there. Is that how it works?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
So this was tension. So you mentioned the racist threats from outside, from adults. Were these weren't parents? These were other members of the community who would.
Oh yeah, no. That wasn't coming from our community at all.
Yeah.
No.
But it became
horrible.
And it became a local flashpoint in terms of...
Yes. Now, last year, the reason why you won't have heard of it is that this all happened on social media and never got into the national press. So people didn't know that this was happening. But it was nonetheless very scary. And that petition had thousands of signatures. And it put us all in serious danger, Like, I mean, physical danger, with the threats that were coming. We had a bomb scare at the school. The police had to search the school for bombs. It was awful. I mean, this one black teacher of mine, she was terrified to come into school. I mean, I can't. It was just, one of my teachers had her home nearly broken into. One of my other teachers had a brick thrown through her window at home. We had bottles broken in the yard, thrown over, from outside. We were under attack. And that, that is awful when you think that our little community is perfectly happy and fine, and people from the outside feel that they can tell us what to do.
Yeah. And this is in the context as well of there being some very serious unrest in other schools in other parts of the UK over these kind of religious questions, like Batley School, where the teacher, I believe, is still in hiding, having shown an image. Was it shown an image of Muhammad to the children? That's what it was.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. So there's very frightening precedent for this. Was it so you had this unrest, you had these threats, and then you banned the prayer, and then the student made her legal claim. Was that the sequence? The episode is not over. There is another maybe 30 minutes of content, but it is behind a paywall. If you would like access to that content, if you would like to show support for the show, paid subscriptions are what keep it on the road. Allow me to pay my producers, put food on the table, all that important stuff. The extended version of the podcast is available at my Substack, louiseperry.substack.com. That's where you can also find, as I say every week, bonus episodes, extended episodes, the MMM chat community, all of this. Please sign up for a paid subscription. It makes such an enormous difference to my ability to keep producing the podcast and grow it even bigger, produce more episodes, all that good stuff. There are other ways that you can show your support for the show as well. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. You can like us on YouTube. You can tell your friends and family how much you like the show. If you find it valuable, all of these things make an enormous difference to our ability to keep making it. Thank you so much.